Collaboration is increasingly important in this day and age as we become more globally connected. The collaboration tools enabled by cloud computing and constantly improving internet connections enable a better client experience, more creativity, problem-solving energy, and a more educated, skilled, and engaged project team. So get off the island, wade into the warm collaboration waters. Welcome to Bridging the Gap with Applied Software. I'm your host, Todd Wyant, and this is the show where we break it all down for you with experts from the AEC and the manufacturing industries. Please feel free to interact with us by liking or commenting on this video. We would love to hear from you. Today we are joined by our very own Matt Dillon. He's the Director of AE Core Services at Applied Software. Matt has an extensive history in the AEC industry and specializes in BIM, consulting, training, and mentoring. Matt, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Todd. Good to be here.
Nice. So collaboration is such a buzzword in the industry and conjures up many different images in one's mind. Can you start by defining what collaboration in the AEC industry means to you?
Yeah, the simple definition would just be, in the AE context, would be organizations working together to resolve issues and deliver successful projects. But that really brings into play a larger discussion. You know, historically, the AE industry has been rather antagonistic and risk averse. So they spend a lot of time just avoiding risk and trying to keep from being sued, which doesn't really lend itself to collaboration very much. But what we're seeing evolve now over the last several years is a truly a more cooperative environment where instead of risk aversion, the focus is on risk management, with everybody beginning to realize that, you know, we're all trying to develop a good process, a good product. A little bit of trust is involved. But in situations where that starts to take place, the product is better, collaboration does occur, and buildings cost less to build. And for a good read on this, if anybody's really interested in how this impacts, say, from the owner's perspective, you can read The Owner's Dilemma by Barbara White Bryson. It's a really good, she really nails it, and she talks about traditional architectural and engineering models and how those have impacted things in the past negatively, and that how the more collaborative efforts that they've been promoting at Rice University have improved project outcomes drastically.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out. So with that definition in mind, what are some of the top benefits that you see for AEC firms who are better able to collaborate?
Well, just right off the top of my head, better end product, like I said, less effort and money spent avoiding risk, and more on tasks directly related to project delivery. So obviously that's going to result in a better product. Because you're spending less money and less time avoiding risk, you got more time to devote on the project, and therefore they're coming in closer to being on budget and on time. And with collaboration, project or problems that typically would arise between disciplines, like clashes and conflicts between systems, as well as errors and omissions, get resolved before construction begins, which obviously is going to reduce change orders and RFIs. And these are things that people have been preaching about the benefits of BIM for years, but they are being realized. With proper technology such as cloud-based collaboration like BIM 360, there's a lot less confusion among the players. People aren't searching for the most current version of the software. There's a single, or current version of the file rather, it's a single source of truth. Everybody's working off the same version of the model, rather than one discipline working with something that might be a week old and another discipline working with something that's a day old. Everything is current. Everybody's working with the same thing. And again, I like to call that single source of truth, but I didn't make that phrase up. So the data is less questionable, and it's much more timely.
Nice. So that would be a huge plus benefit there for sure. So collaboration, it truly covers the full process from design to construction to building occupancy to maintenance. Why would this really matter to firms on a more practical level?
Well, in traditional kind of design bid build processes, there's a lot of data handoff. So you've got the architects and the engineers doing their work, and they're passing data back and forth. And in those handoffs, there's information that gets left behind. There's information about the engineering model that maybe the architect doesn't get. It's it's in the engineer's head, literally. There's information in the architectural drawings that go to the contractor or I should say in the architect's head, that isn't necessarily in the drawings that go to the contractor. All that information has to be rebuilt, redone, and then when it gets to the owner, it starts all over again. The owner gets a set of as-built drawings maybe, but that doesn't have everything that the owner needs to know about that building to maintain it through the building life cycle process. With the BIM process, you've got less of that data loss during handover from one process or one entity to the other. So at the end of the day, if the BIM requirements, BIM standards set forth by the owner are consistent and followed, then the owner has much more than just a set of drawings to go by to manage the building. They've got a data-rich model that they can use to coordinate and integrate with their existing or future CMMS and facilities management systems.
So Matt, the newly released Autodesk 2020 products have features that will streamline your design process, saving you and your firm precious time. What are some of the highlights for you that AEC firms should take notice of in the 2020 release?
Well, admittedly, my focus is on architecture and building design, but with that in mind, there's a ton of things in the new 2020 features or products that I'm excited about. With general architectural Revit features are things like elliptical walls and curtain walls. When I saw that feature, I said, wow, we couldn't do elliptical walls before, and we couldn't. We kind of had to fake it. So now we can do true elliptical walls and curtain walls. Path of travel is a huge thing for life safety, for example, for checking the distance of travel that someone has to make from a particular location and building to the nearest exit. And you can literally just pick a point in a plan view and then pick an exit, and it'll draw the closest path of travel. It'll find the exits, the doorways and everything, and then give you that distance. And that can be scheduled, so you can get very quick analysis of egress in a building. Huge with Revit, and you're kind of surprised that it didn't have it before, I guess, is PDF import. So we can now import PDF files, something we never could do before. And this is important because there's a lot of legacy data out there that is not in a building information model or a 3D model at all. A lot of times all the owner has is maybe a PDF of existing conditions. And if you want to do a renovation project, well, the first step is to document those existing conditions in Revit. And the PDF import will allow us to do that. You can bring the PDF file in. It's scale aware, so it can come in properly scaled. And if it doesn't, for some reason, if it doesn't have that awareness, you can scale it very easily because you can snap to specific points, intersections, endpoints, etc. on that PDF, just like other things in the Revit model. There are some improved view filters. So a powerful tool for controlling visibility of objects in Revit is to filter objects by a variety of criteria. However, if the criteria that you could filter by was limited to several common properties of multiple categories, those view filters have been improved to where you can get much more specific with them now. We can now copy and paste legends across sheets. So if you have, for example, a key plan is a type of a little drawing that might appear on multiple sheets and be reproduced several times, well, you can easily now propagate that key plan onto multiple sheets with pretty much a couple of mouse clicks. SketchUp 2018 is supported. I'm not a big fan of SketchUp in the workflow process simply because SketchUp models are not as usable in Revit as, say, a format model is. So I encourage people that are using SketchUp. I understand why they're using it. There's nothing wrong with SketchUp. It's a very good modeler. It's just that ultimately you have to get that into Revit, and I encourage people to use format instead. But I understand that people do still like to use SketchUp. The good news is we do now support SketchUp 2018, so you no longer have to save it back to, I think it was 2016 or maybe even previous before it would come in. It also has improved translation of SketchUp materials, so a little bit better support for that. And then again, there's also been some cloud rendering improvements as well.
Nice. So you mentioned the cloud rendering. How does Revit 2020 help with cloud rendering?
Mainly with performance. There's two things that they've done. Something called single frame splitting, which speeds up rendering. When you have a large single image, it'll split that image up into smaller pieces and distribute those pieces onto multiple rendering machines at the same time. So it's drastically speeding up the rendering process. And then the other thing is filter-based quality metrics. And that's a fancy way of saying you can tell the cloud renderer what level of quality you want in the rendering, and once it reaches that quality, it stops rendering. It doesn't just keep going for some set period of time. So that's been shown to increase rendering times by up to 30% or more. Oh, wow. And because of the speeds that they've been able to get, the improvement of speeds, they've been doing some tweaking on the material rendering quality as well to take advantage of that, or to, since it takes longer to render better materials, well, now we have more time to do that. They've improved some of the material quality.
Nice. So what are some of the other features in Revit 2020 that you're excited about? Anything for our MEP fabrication and structural friends?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, lots of stuff for MEP and structural and fabrication. So on the MEP and fabrication side, MEP specifically, electrical, they've done some improvements to home runs. So home run arrows are much more customizable for better construction documents. There's MEP components that you place in a model. Historically, there's been a little bit of confusion as to how to set their height. For example, if you have a wall switch, how do you set the height on the wall? Because the terminology is a little confusing, and they've improved that. There's now a new elevation from level parameter that makes it very clear where you're setting the elevation from, as opposed to just offset. And then if you have something that's hosted, the offset parameter is offset from host. So are you setting the elevation from the level, or are you setting the offset from the host? It's just a little bit more clear. For fabrication, there's a couple of additions. There's a change service improvement, which allows for, say, a run of duct that, because of the service that it's on, is round. Maybe you change that to another service, but you want that to maintain its shape. Well, in the past, it might change to a different shape of duct based on that service, and now you can tell it, no, I want you to go to this other service, supply or return, whatever, and maintain your shape. In addition, there is a new Revit extension for fabrication add-in available for Revit. It's a separate download, but it's free for subscription members, and that allows you to generate a CSV or a text file that can then be used in spreadsheet applications or other tools for quantification and nesting and procurement applications.
Nice.
And one more thing I almost forgot, and this really is also big for the electrical guys. We can now connect panels. So in the past, whenever we had a power panel that was being fed, say, from a main panel, a main breaker panel, and I'm not an electrical engineer, so forgive my terminology, but those typically get handled in a variety of ways. Well, prior to this release, the only way was basically it was just another circuit on the main power panel and was being fed through a transformer. Now we can feed through lugs, and I'll be honest, as an architect, I don't know exactly what that means, but from what I understand, it's a pretty big deal for the electrical engineers, is the ability to feed through lugs for panels connecting to each other.
Nice. Well, good to know to look into more, for sure. So let's shift focus away from Revit for a minute and
wait a minute. You didn't ask me about structural, Todd. You asked me about MEP. Don't leave the structural guys out.
Go for it. Let's hear about it.
So there's some good stuff for structural in here. There's some rebar improvements. So if you've got a what's the word I'm looking for? More of a freeform shape of concrete, for example, and you do a copy of a rebar shape inside that concrete, the copy move logic's been improved. You can control whether the rebar stays attached, if you will, to the cover depth, so it kind of follows the shape of the form, or does it maintain its shape? In some cases, you don't want it to follow the cover depth, and you want it to maintain its shape as it's being copied along the length of, say, an angled beam or something, chamfered beam, whatever, and you can now do that, so you have control over that. There's also improved annotation for freeform rebar. You can do multi-rebar annotation, even for rebar that is not parallel to the current view plane, which is something we couldn't do in the past. And a big deal, in my opinion, is the ability to now place rebar in not just in-place stairs, but any in-place structural object. In the past, we were very limited in what we could do there. On the steel side, the steel connections that you can now define with Revit can be propagated. So if you define a steel connection, for example, for a particular condition between, say, a beam and a column, you can, with a couple of clicks of the mouse, propagate that connection to every other condition that's the same. And then if you come back later and modify one of those connections, all of the same connections will update automatically. There's also a Dynamo package for steel connections. So if you're using Dynamo to automate any Revit processes, there's now a fairly full-featured Dynamo package you can download to provide functionality in Dynamo for steel connections. A lot of the improvements for Revit structural steel, just as a side note, if people are wanting to try these out, they're found in the advanced steel extension for Revit, and you can go to your accounts page and download that and install it for Revit at no charge for subscription members. The other thing, and just one minor little thing here for structural, but from a user experience standpoint, is pretty important. A lot of things that we do in a Revit model, for example, moving a level, something as simple as moving a level can take a while because it's doing a lot of computational things to the model and making a lot of adjustments to things. That now, with the structural model, happens in the background. So when you do those computationally intense move and modify operations, a lot of the computation is going on in the background, freeing you up to continue to work in the model instead of watching that little blue circle go around for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, whatever.
Nice. Very cool. Sounds like there's a bunch of stuff packed in this new Revit release for 2020.
Quite a few. A lot more than it looks like on the surface.
Nice. So going on to Civil 3D and InfraWorks, what kind of new key features in the 2020 release are there for those our Civil 3D and InfraWorks friends?
Well, on the Civil 3D side, there are two features in particular that our Civil guys are excited about. One of them is, again, Dynamo for Civil 3D. So Dynamo is now available for Civil 3D. Nice. And we have one of our guys that's diving into that and learning that as quickly as he can. He's pretty excited about it. And he's also excited about, Brian Haley, who's one of our Civil guys. He's also very excited about the gravity network analysis tool that they've rolled out for Civil 3D as well. Then on the InfraWorks side, there's and this is just something that was fed to me by one of our guys, the ability to edit features in InfraWorks from an outside data source and then save them back using the Esri data collector, which kind of touches on something else our guys are excited about, and that is the new relationship we've got with Esri regarding Autodesk and Esri products. Yeah,
very cool. Yeah, that's an exciting partnership. For sure.
Not sure exactly how that's going to flesh out yet. We're still working out all the details, but it's looking pretty good. Pretty excited.
Yeah.
Lots of potential.
Very cool. So I wonder if you can speak to those people that are watching and going, yeah, this all sounds great, but, we don't have enough people. We're a small firm, or, we don't have the time to sit and really explore all these new updates. Or insert objection here. Why should they take a step into this direction, and what resources are available to help them on their journey?
Well, Todd, you have hit on something that we do, right? So this is something we deal with all the time. It's very common. So if I start bloviating on this, just stop me.
We'll rein you back in.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a real common scenario. You've got, and it's not unique to any one firm type or firm size. It's small firms, big firms, civil firms, architectural firms, structural firms, whatever. The problem is we're typically dealing at some level with disruptive technology, which means it's going to change the way you do things in a big way. I mean, think of the way your smartphone has changed the way you do things in your life. Mm. And to implement that type of technology successfully and effectively, it takes resources, it takes time, and most firms don't have the resources. They just don't have the people on staff that are able to do that. Or if they do have the people on staff that have the knowledge and the skills to do it, those people are too busy dealing with billable work and other things and don't have the time to do it. And that's why it's important to reach out to an outside resource like us. We do this all the time to assist. We can work with your people to develop standards and workflows and do process analysis. We can do all kinds of stuff to kind of map things out and then actually execute. And it's a lot more than just training. It's building content and templates and changing firm culture. Much more than just buying the software and taking a class like it used to be with, say, AutoCAD. A lot of firms don't do this because they look at it as, it's an expense. Obviously, we don't do it for free. It costs money. Firms look at that and they see it as an expense. And really the way they need to look at it is more of an investment. You're going to spend some money to make some money back, and you'll get a return on investment that is well worth the time and effort and money that you spend to get it to happen. And I taught a class on this at Autodesk University. So if you do want to hear me bloviate at length, you can go up to Autodesk. You can just Google Autodesk University online, sign in with your Autodesk ID, and then just do a search on my name. There's a whole list of classes that I've taught up there over the years, but there's one that I taught in November 2018. The title is Implementations That Stick, blah, blah, blah. You can look for that one. It's about an hour long, and I talk about what's involved with implementing disruptive technology. What are the things, the pitfalls that you need to avoid, how to avoid them, that kind of thing.
Nice. Good to know. Well, thanks so much for joining us on the show, Matt. You've given us some great insights and things to look for in those 2020 Autodesk release for sure. I'm very excited to get more information on that 2020 release. And for those watching, thank you for watching this show today. And if you're interested in the 2020 release or any of our other products or services, you can visit ASTI.com. Finally, I want to invite you to two of our webinar series. The first is called Bite Size BIM, and the second is AEC Trend Chats. These are 30-minute webinars where we take a deep dive into a particular area of the AEC world. You can visit info.asti.com/additional resources for more information and to register for those webinars, or you can click the link that will be in the comment section of this video. Until next time, I'm Todd Wyant, thanking you for joining us on Bridging the Gap with Applied Software. Thanks, everybody.